What this video explores is not a recreation of the sensory experience of being in the Central Garden at the J. Paul Getty Center in Los Angeles on a gorgeous day, but rather we are looking at the users and specifically their response and interaction with the garden. The Central Garden was conceived by artist Robert Irwin as what I'm going to call a phenomenological intervention or piece. The Getty Center refers to the Central Garden as a commissioned site-specific work of art, and as such it has been ascensioned by the Getty. Getty curator Antonia Bostrom recognizes that most of their visitors experience the Central Garden as a fantastic garden and not as a work of art, which is exactly the way Robert Irwin would prefer. Irwin has vigorously protested any sort of audio tour of his garden or even any official title or plaque designating the work, preferring instead unmediated and direct perceptual experience. I will argue in the body of my thesis why this garden should be bracketed out from all other gardens as art. I am hoping you can bracket out your judgment momentarily and instead intuit by observing from the reactions of the visitors as demonstrative of the Central Garden's success or failure as a perceptual piece. We are now at the second crossing of the ravine, where the sound of the stream is amplified and the plantings are visually more subdued, and the view downstream becomes dominant. You can also begin to get a sense of the presence of being in the space with the shadows playing off the sycamores, the wind, the sound of the stream, and the birds. It is all quite lovely. We are now at the fourth crossing of the river, where the planting has become much more riotous and visually demanding, and the stream has quieted down a bit. This is also the location of what I call the Come Touch Me plant. The Core 10 retaining wall is up at about waist height, and the plant is fuzzy and has an incredible translucent purple flower. People were smelling it, touching it, and I noticed one visitor picked it and put it in her hair. Here we are at the point where the ravine opens out onto the terrace. This is a broad, open space where people can sit and rest. Kids are putting their hands and their feet into the stream and generally pausing or transitioning before they go down into the bowl garden or return to the museum galleries. These women had a continuous conversation for the 20 minutes I sat here, while their companion was sleeping the entire time. Here we are at the descent into the bowl garden, and this is really where garden enthusiasts seem to interact with the garden the most. Groups seem to break up, and you see individuals getting down and photographing the details of plants, looking up at the arbor, or they are generally spending a lot of time and moving slowly. Where there are groups that stick together, they tend to discuss individual plants and have conversations, more like what happens at traditional botanic gardens. What I found quite interesting is how and what people photographed. In the other courtyard spaces within the Getty Center, the subject of the photograph was almost always a person who was in the foreground, with the cactus garden or the fountain or the panoramic view or the buildings as background. However, while in the Central Garden, in both the ravine and in the bowl garden, the garden became the subject of the photograph. I see the Central Garden in two ways. One as a space with an incredible presence and intimacy. I also see the Central Garden as a place allowing visitors to store up primary perceptions, as a refilling of the complex ideas and rearrangements of perceptions that are within the gallery walls. If the history of philosophy could be seen as a pendulum swing, from the primacy of ideas to the primacy of perceptions, the pavilion and art galleries are at the zenith swing of the Plutonic world of ideas, while the Central Garden is at the opposite end of the arc, in the very real world of human perception.